So the agenda for today, we'll talk about what is no code. We'll talk about how there is a perception or a stigma with no code. We'll dive into what the promise of no code is and then talk about that stigma. We'll talk about how there's a new generation of no code tools today. We'll break down the term no code and understand the power of words. And we'll describe why there's a need for a new identity, especially with this new generation of tools. We'll talk about why that identity is visual development, and then we'll wrap it up and have some Q&A. Awesome. So what do you think of when you hear the term no code? I want you to just kind of broadly think about that. So first, let's look at how no code is defined. And just by Google searching, we can see there's a few different definitions. So TechTarget says, no code is a software development approach that requires few, if any, programming skills to quickly build an application. NoCode.tech says the no-code movement refers to an ecosystem of tools and platforms that lets anyone build and launch software without learning how to code. And finally, MakerPad says it's a term used to describe a method of creating software, such as websites and apps, using visual drag and drop interfaces instead of code. In other words, no code lets anyone, regardless of their technical ability, build on the internet. So as you can see, there's various definitions, no one standard definition, but there's some common themes, right? Visual interfaces, allowing anyone to build software, building software quickly. So to further illustrate this, let's just look at a quick timeline of no code. And we can actually go back to over 40 years ago when this idea was first conceptualized in the book Application Development Without Programming. In 1985, Microsoft Excel was launched, allowing anyone to manipulate data in a spreadsheet without code. Well, fast forward to 2003. Obviously, the internet boom happened in between then, but we see tools like WordPress and Shopify come onto the scene. What's crazy is there's still over 30% of websites today are built on WordPress. In 2011, Forrester said the first usage of the term low-code development platform can be found. And just after that, we see pioneering no-code tools like Webflow and Bubble come onto the scene. And no-code started to grow. So in 2019, Gartner published a study that said 65% of all application development will be driven by no code by 2024, which is obviously the year we're in now. In 2020, Google acquired AppSheet. This was big because one of the tech giants acquiring a no-code tool really legitimized the space. And we also had COVID-19 in 2020. Why was that important? Well, this really transformed the way we think in a lot of ways and reoriented ourselves towards no code. People now decided to have, work on their business or their side hustle or had more time to do that. A lot of people without programming skills or non-technical skills turned to no code to realize those dreams. And we saw more and more no code tools pop into the scene, and by the end of the year, it's estimated the market worth of no code will be around $50 billion. So with all that in mind, what do you think of when you hear no code? Some of you might think of a stigma with no code, so let's jump into that. Let's talk about what the perception is. We'll first describe the promise of no code and then get into that stigma. So the promise of no code, rapid application development through these point and click or drag and drop interfaces. Right? You should very easily and quickly be able to build your app or software and deploy it. With that increased time to market, reduced development costs. Maybe you don't need to hire additional developers, or it doesn't take your developer as long to build the application. And of course, huge time savings, right? You're moving a lot quicker than you would with traditional code. Also being easily scalable. On a no-code platform, you should be able to focus on building the best app or software possible And you shouldn't have to worry about the other things. Continue to build and know that platform will be reliable as you go from MVP to production and beyond. Now, on a macro level, we have over 8 billion people in the world, yet only around 29 million software developers. That's less than 0.3% of the population that knows how to program, that's creating software. So if you think about the promise of no code, it's about unlocking that 99+% of the population, democratizing software so other people can lend their ideas, their creativity to contribute and to build software. Now, despite all that, no code has become sort of a buzzword in recent years and has carried some baggage or stigma with it. When people think of no code, they often think of it having limited functionality, being inflexible, right? Like you're stuck in a box or confined to the bounds of that no-code platform. Similarly, that it's not customizable. You're given a set of puzzle pieces, but if those pieces don't fit into the larger app or software you're building, well, you're kind of out of luck. And finally, not scalable. You wouldn't build an enterprise-grade application on no code, or you couldn't. And as you grow, the platform, well, it falls apart. A lot of people like to say no code is great for MVPs, but eventually you need real code. So where does the truth lie? Well, it's somewhere in the middle. It's true that there are no-code platforms out there that are limited in functionality. You can't really customize too much, and you wouldn't or couldn't even build large-scale or enterprise-grade applications on it. However, not all no-code tools are created equally. Today, there's a new generation of tools that have learned from the sins of the past and are checking the boxes for what's needed to create large-scale or enterprise-grade applications. Now, some of these tools include Xano, WeWeb, Flutterflow, Toddle, just to name a few. And those boxes that they're addressing are things like security and compliance, scalability and reliability. They're built with the right technologies in their DNA with scalability in mind so that as you do grow, you don't have to leave for real code. Architectural supervision. So building with software best practices in mind and putting up things like guardrails through role-based access control and supporting the software development lifecycle. Now, especially in this age of AI, where more and more people are being exposed to software development, these new platforms can pick up where AI leaves off. Through providing enhanced development environments through visual interfaces, giving people control and understanding of what's happening and being able to tweak things as needed. Having traditional software principles baked in. And this is important because no matter how you're building software, the same principles apply, whether it's with traditional code or no code. If you're not built on a solid foundation, as your app grows in traffic or complexity, things will fall apart. So this new generation of tools embraces those traditional software principles. Also providing ownership and control and customization. These tools aren't abstracting the same concepts from programming, but embracing them. So you can have that full ownership and control of your application. And lastly, time and cost savings are realized with that faster time to market. But not only that, you can iterate so much faster than with traditional code and react to market trends. So given all that, does this new generation in AI deserve to be brought down by the baggage of the earlier generation of no-code tools? How do we break the stigma? Well, again, what do you think of when you hear no code now? Now, those last few slides probably, if you're already thinking of the stigma, didn't change much, right? So let's actually examine the term no code to understand the power of words, right? We have no, and we have code, no code, no code, okay? So what about no? No evokes a negative connotation, a limitation. There's a lack, something's missing, like I can't have or I can't do something, okay? And what about code? Broadly speaking, it means a set of symbols that has some hidden meaning. In the scope of what we're talking about today, you might think, okay, highly technical skills are needed. It can be daunting, maybe confusing, seem endless. So if you have no, which implies exclusion or limits, it's negative, and you have code, which can feel daunting and intimidating, what are the implications of this as an industry? What is the message we're sending? It feels a lot more like something's exclusive, a head scratcher, rather than its intended meaning to be inclusive to the masses, to empower anyone to build scalable world-class software. So, how do we break the stigma? Well, let's drop the term no code. Because a transformation is happening with this new generation, a paradigm shift. It needs a new identity. To embrace this transformation so that the promise of this new generation is realized. What is that new identity? It's visual development. Why visual development? Well, visual development reflects the maturity of these tools by providing professional-grade environments with visual interfaces for programming. It underscores the strength of these tools, which is visualizing complex systems. Visual development is a more inclusive term. Not only does it apply to a wider range of tools outside of this new generation of no code, but it's familiar to the developer, yet accessible to non-technical users looking to learn and understand and build software themselves. And let's not focus on the lack. Let's drop the no and emphasize the approach, which is programming through visual interfaces. And lastly, visual development better aligns with modern development practices, such as visual data modeling, workflow design, and API development. So what do you think of when you hear visual development? If you are a designer, product owner, developer, visual development can help you take your ideas further, not just from idea or concept, but to production and beyond, and very quickly. So welcome to the new generation, which is visual development. Now, if you've tried to implement no code in the past, but have been shot down or have been hesitant because of the stigma and the barrier that no code puts up, let's jump that hurdle with visual development. If you want to learn more, I'd first go to xano.com/visual development. You also see other tools a part of this movement, like Flutterflow, like Toddle, that I've recently put out content around this as well. Also, come find me. I'll be here the rest of the week. If you don't get a chance to connect, contact me. Happy to connect you with resources, brainstorm with you, understand your use case and why visual development applies. So thank you all. And I think we have time for questions now. All right, any questions?
I'm back.
You got it?
Do you have any questions? Hands up. Anyone? Yeah, okay.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I really like the power of visual development as something that's supposed to release the stigma from no-code development. But to the point, sorry. I wanted to ask you, could you give us any good, I don't know, meaningful examples of larger scale applications built with no code, or in terms of new proposition visual development?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can speak probably most specifically to Xano, which is my company. But a few, yeah. So Heimstaden, which is a large real estate company based out of Norway but has apartments all over Europe, uses Xano as their main backend and infrastructure. You can actually find that case study too on our website. We also have companies like Fluence, which is a Siemens company, building on Xano, as well as companies like Qualtrics, which is a SAP company that does customer experience. So we're definitely seeing no code being implemented in sort of these large examples. And like I said, yeah, we have the case studies up on our website if you want to learn more about that. I'm also happy to chat with you later too.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi. One of the things I've seen quite a lot with no-code is that it tends to be both, comes with an expectation for people who are new to development, that it's going to be very, very easy, but also from experienced people that it's going to be very limited. You already spoke to that. What do you find to be the biggest challenge for you as a company that offers a professional grade no-code, if you want to say that, or a visual development platform aimed at professionals mostly, right? What is your biggest challenge in the sort of preconceptions that people come with? Which one is the main?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is probably the people coming in expecting it to be easy. There is also a misconception that no code doesn't mean no complexity, right? A lot of people come in and don't realize that. So there's an education piece to it and getting people to think differently. Sort of like a developer in the sense that even though you're not coding, you're still applying the same concepts and principles in this environment. So that's probably the biggest hurdle. I think we often see the more technical audience come in and understand what it is. And we use a lot of the same terminology and concepts for traditional developers, so they're able to pick it up a little quicker than the people coming in without that experience.
Do you have any more questions? Okay. So, Michael, I can agree with you more. The no-code revolution just started, and we are, on the front of it. So we are pushing from the technological part to product part. Like every startup founder, like years ago, thought about technology. Now we are thinking more about the products. We are more product-centric than technology-centric, I think. Can you agree with that? Can you have opinion about that as well? That we are switching from looking at technology when we are building startup, and we are looking more at the product. So technology is a tool, not the meaning in the, it's not as important as it used to be, thanks to no code.
So you're saying that because of no code, you're able to focus more on the product instead of get buried in the tech. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's why it's important and why this new generation is making sure the right technology is there so you can focus on the product. And you don't meet that point once you get to production and hit this critical mass where things fall apart. You're able to trust it and it's reliable and there's a path forward for you.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh, we have more questions.
So with the rise of OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, and all of these generative AI solutions that making coding easy, I've heard some opinion from real coders or pro coders that it might actually shift the interest back. So we moved from coding to more no code or no visual development, but they said, okay, but now we can easily generate real code with this AI that is also interested in developing more of that, like the AI solutions that will do this better and better. So they say, okay, so this actually might mean that it will shift back to like working with like real code or like real coding languages like JS and Python, because now AI will just generate a full scope of an applications or like big chunks of it without using any platform. Maybe some like new like something embedded in Visual Studio or something like that. So what do you think about this opinion or maybe thinking?
Yeah, I think so. With AI becoming more and more popular and being able to generate code, I think what you're starting to see with a lot of this new generation is embrace that and bring on ways where you can produce that visual interface or that code in a way where it's giving you the foundation starting piece, but because now you have a visual interface, you can understand what's happening. You can make tweaks if something's not right with the AI, versus if you get lines and lines of code, if you're not a developer, you might not understand what's going on. So how are you going to change things? How are you going to understand and actually have ownership of what the AI is producing? Visual development, those visual interfaces enable you to do that. So I very much see the tools that are going to continue to succeed really get married in with that capability with AI.
Okay, agree. Yeah, I just want to tell that I think exactly that as well, because what tools like Xano or Flutterflow gives us apart from visual development is also some sort of standard that another person can jump into the project and it knows to some degree how it is set up and built, because they have the same framework. When you're building with the code alone, like the approach might be completely different. Maybe not completely different, but there's it might be written in a way that for one person is completely understandable, for other it's not. I think in tools like Xano, it's much more approachable, and you still can utilize AI.
I'm not sure I could hear all of it, but I think from what I heard, so you're saying that that these tools are more approachable, and why? Is that sort of your question?
Yes, more approachable and more standardized in terms that, let's say I'm working with Xano and I'm jumping into the already existing projects that someone else built. And as you said, if I will be looking and someone else like code in Python written in a way that one person thinks, I would have much harder time if it's not the way I'm thinking to understand that. In Xano, when we have this visual development, I know most of the stuff, even if they're not in exact sequence, I will build that. To understand of that is like much easier job for me.
Yeah, 100%. And interesting enough, that's one of the things, I think the question earlier about like larger corporations using no code. Our customer Heimstaden has said, because they've brought in a lot of product owners to work in Xano, while sort of the developers sit at the top as, you know, supervising the architecture. But anyone on the team is able to come in and understand what's happening because it's all visual, it's all standardized, versus if it's, you know, code, having to dive into that if someone does something different, not quite understanding. So very quickly, to your point, being able to jump in and understand what's happening through a visual interface.
I saw one hand over there, and second one. Awesome, so many questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. If I building some website with no code, I always have something like a progressive web application, if you know what is.
Was the question professional certification for no code?
If I make a website with progressive web application, I have one application in the web, in iOS, Android, and Windows.
I apologize, I still couldn't quite hear.
Yeah. So if I using no code, I have progressive web application.
What was it? PW. Progressive web application.
Yeah.
Ah. That is a good question. That might be, so from my perspective where I deal with a backend, that might be a better question for a front-end tool about progressive web application. I see Andreas from Toddle giving 2 thumbs up in the front row.
Okay, there was another question here. Over here. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation again. And I was wondering, because you said that modern visual development tools are based on real code. So do you think that people who actually know how to code have an advantage in these tools? Or maybe do you recommend before starting with these tools to learn maybe the basic of HTML and CSS or something more?
Yeah, great question. You know, one of the overwhelming things that I know we've heard at Xano, especially from users coming in with less technical experience, is that jumping into this visual interface, and like we talked about earlier, there's this whole education piece, which is definitely a challenge, but them actually learning these concepts that are, you know, one-to-one with programming has actually leveled up their game, and they've been able to understand things better. So to that point, I actually do see it as also an educational tool to come in and learn those concepts very quickly versus, you know, you could still learn those in code, but you're actually building something of consequence now in this visual interface and iterating very quickly.
Thank you. So primary to coding should be these visual development tools because you learn the rules for code, yes?
Yeah, in general, yes, absolutely. Like I said, when they have the same traditional software principles baked in, and they're not ignoring the developer, but embracing that part of it, then absolutely, it's a great tool to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any more questions? We have one from internet. I wonder on how no-code can be implemented when you are building a very big site that consists of few microsites for a client, and the client needs CMS like Umbraco, for example. Is that even possible?
I couldn't quite hear. Can you say that again?
Obviously. Maybe I'm going to show you the question. That's going to be the easiest part.
I think it's because the speaker is facing away from me. Awesome. Thank you. All right. I wonder how no-code can be implemented when you are building a very big site that consists of few microsites for a client, and the client needs CMS like Umbraco, for example. Is that even possible? I'm not familiar with Umbraco, but for something like that, I mean, that could be a perfect use case for Xano. And I guess I'll toot the own horn here a little bit, but Xano will deploy a scalable server in a single tenant infrastructure, which is important because you're not sharing resources with other users. So you have your own server, which you can scale as large as you need to, a flexible database built on Postgres, which is scalable horizontally and vertically, and then a way to create APIs visually. So having a backend like that can be your single source of truth for this very large website with microsites, and you can plug your different API endpoints in wherever is needed.